welcome everybody. I'm Olivia from Whole Whale. We are going to wait just a few more minutes to start. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, George has a few opening remarks.
I think remarks are generous. My name is George. Thanks for joining early. And I don't think people that join early should be penalized, which is why I'll be telling you some jokes. Alrighty. Hey, Olivia. How do you organize a fundraiser to help the earth?
I don't know, George. How do you organize a fundraiser to help the earth?
You plan it.
That's a slow clap. That's a slow clap, George.
Again, hey, Justin.
Hey, George.
Why are crabs such bad donors?
They're crabby.
Nah, man, they're shellfish.
Shellfish.
I'm just imagining like hundreds of people just cracking up right now. This is the reward you're getting for joining early to our webinar, which will not include bad dad jokes, but here we are. We will be getting started shortly, but until then, hey Justin, why did Elon Musk donate all of his car batteries?
I don't know, George.
Justin, they were free of charge.
That's a good one. Hey, George, what's black and white and red all over?
I will go with the newspaper.
How do you know that one?
That should be the joke. What, you've heard that one?
I just heard that last night at dinner. My wife thought it was actually a fly smashed by a newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, like you can go a lot of different ways on it. That's the general gist.
My 6-year-old didn't actually know what a newspaper was, which was.
Oh, so you got to go like. Yeah, it doesn't really work for iPad, does it? Like
That was one of those aha moments.
That may be the real joke, is that a 6-year-old does not know what a newspaper is.
Is that bad parenting?
Gosh, that's above my pay grade to tell you, but that's where we're going. Olivia, I believe we're going to get started maybe in a couple minutes. Are we getting close? We have 93 participants. It's not bad.
Yes, it is 1:31. Let's give everybody just another minute or so to.
I've got a longer joke. It's not good, but fortunately, I do have enough joke to fill that in. Alrighty, so a little bit more of a story joke about a marketing analyst who happens to be taking a flight, big passenger jet, for 4 engines. The flight's just taken off. They're on their way to San Francisco, and suddenly the pilot comes over and says, "Hey, no cause for alarm. Our schedule just got pushed back about a half hour. We got to take it a bit slower. We lost one of our engines. Still got 3 good ones. Just going to tack on another 30 minutes to our flight. Just letting you know." Marketing analyst is like, all right, well, whatever, that's fine. Talking to his seatmate. I didn't have a meeting until a few hours later. Some time goes by. Pilot comes on. Hey, little rough news here. Got to add another 30 minutes. Not a good day for engines. Apparently, lost another engine. We're fine. It takes 2 engines, a little slower. So you know what? We're going to be about an hour now. So we're just going to tack on another 30 minutes. The marketing analyst is like, I can still catch a cab. Make it there for the meeting. I'm all right. Pilot comes back on. He's getting a little more intense. A little sweat off his brow. He's like, hey everyone, we're gotta slow it down again. For some reason, we're still going to San Francisco. We lost another engine here. Tacking on another 30 minutes. It's gonna be an hour and a half late. I've done this before. I can make it on an engine. We're still good to make it to San Francisco. Marketing analyst is like, I don't know, hour and a half's kind of cutting it. Pilot comes on again. He's, pretty pale. He's like, oh, it's not looking good. We lost the last engine. We're going to have to figure something out up here. So hold tight. Now the marketing analyst, is there. Everyone's freaking out. And he's just like, this is ridiculous. At this rate, we're going to be up here forever.
silent clap from all around the world.
Please note that the jokes told by George Weiner do not speak for Whole Whale on the whole. Yeah. Before we lose people to that joke, I'd like to welcome everyone to WWULive, building email acquisition from aware to committed with a funnel of engagement. We are going to put the fun in funnel today. I'm Olivia Marlowe Giavetti. I'm the account strategist whaler with Whole Whale. And with me today is our founder and chief whaler, George Weiner, as well as Justin Perkins, the VP of Strategic Partnerships at Care2. A few bits of housekeeping. We are going to be recording the webinar today and sharing the deck afterwards on wholewhale.com. We may or may not include the jokes at the beginning with it. We'll see how that does with the overall test group. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A at the end. And with that, I am going to pass the mic over to Justin.
Great, thank you, Olivia, and thanks, George. My name is Justin Perkins. I've had the pleasure of working with Care2 for about the last 12 years. Care2 is the largest social network for good, and a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about today is from the perspective of really the largest online social good community that's been around for about 20 years and has learned a lot of lessons. In my specific background, I've worked on over 700 campaigns. I've helped organizations of every stripe recruit over 20 million email subscribers through on the order of 40 million petition signatures. I've kind of witnessed the end of Friendster right through the last days of the fax machine and before the first days of YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I live in Boulder. I'm here in my home office. I'm a dad of two amazing girls, age 6 and 8. Married to an amazing woman from Mexico who's a scientist. And I run a snack company on the side called Olo Momo that makes these really tasty, delicious roasted nuts. I love telemark skiing. And someday I hope to breakdance like George Weiner, which is actually how George and I met, was breakdancing in Las Vegas. But the main reason you should listen to me today is because I almost convinced Fabio, and yes, that is Fabio, to hold my snacks. I am really passionate about this notion of movement building and have had the blessing to be kind of behind the scenes through Care2, both in my own work, but also through colleagues' work and probably most of the major movement buildings that has happened online in the last decade plus. And this is just a great image that sort of captures the spirit of what can happen when a community really comes together. This is actually a shot from a New Belgium brewery get-together called the Tour de Fat, and they're all about bicycles and beer. And I show this because it's an amazing example of what can happen when you tie in online and offline activation. So over the Christmas holiday, we were trying to keep our kids off the screen as much as possible. So we rented out a racquetball court at the local rec center, and we bought 2 giant bags of Super Balls and cut 5 little kids loose in this racquetball court with Super Balls bouncing everywhere. It was awesome. Total chaos, total fun. And I was looking through my pictures this morning when I saw this, and it kind of reminded me of how the opposite, which is sort of how I felt during the last year of trying to wrangle the internet during the Trump administration. And so I'm really big this year on focus and stopping my border collie instincts, as I'm going to challenge all of you in the rest of this webinar. So close your email, stop multitasking, chill out like my border collie Maya here doing yoga, and want you to listen to the soothing words of my voice as we explore the wonderful world of email and multi-channel cultivation. It's a lot more like this. This is how I wish the world was all the time, just a giant foam pit of fun. So email marketing is the secret really behind why Care2 has been able to cultivate and retain and attract and really spark the passion of this community of over 40 million people since 1998. One really cool fact is about 47% of Care2's audience returns to the site each day. And that's mainly because of email prompts. We're obviously these days integrated with social media. And across email and social, we see about an average of 25% of our communities share the content on our site. And that's through a number of different channels. And I'm going to tell a quick story of how this can all come together in a really exciting way. I was at a conference and happened to meet the CEO of Annie's at the time. Annie's organic food. They make the cute alternative to Kraft macaroni and cheese, which is how you know them probably. The CEO reached out and said, hey, there's this amazing farmer in Los Angeles named Ron Finley, who is about to have this incredible organic farm that he built in the middle of South Central LA foreclosed on by a bank. And Ron had been campaigning for over a year to try to save this little pocket of, healthy oasis in the middle of this awful ghetto. He'd renovated this swimming pool that was full of graffiti and just started planting stuff. He says it with a little more expletive on the stuff. And Ron's this, giant, beautiful man, just an incredibly friendly guy. The natural products community, which I'm a part of, kind of in my alternate life, rallied around to try to help him out. And he was around, going around this conference, giving high fives to everybody. But meantime, he had to figure out how to raise $500,000 in about a week, or he was going to lose the property. So the CEO of Annie stepped up, and he called me and I said, hey, do you want to author a petition? And he said, sure, that'd be great. Within 3 hours, our PR team was on the phone with Annie's. They pulled in Nell Newman, the CEO of Newman's Organics, and we activated our machine of being able to reach out to millions of people through email and our social channels. And our PR team got to work and was able to get Ron Finley and Nell and John Foraker interviews on major media in LA, as well as on the national news on CBS right before 60 Minutes. And the result was, in a week, we had 60,000 people engage on this campaign because it was such an amazing David and Goliath story. And the ultimate result was they raised over $500,000 and were able to buy the property outright. So this is just kind of an example of how it can all come together when you have all of your funnel strategy working in concert and you're prepared to be lucky for those moments that happen. Okay, so a little bit of reality check here. There's a good reason why we've anchored our entire business model at Care2 around email acquisition. And this is a great insight into why. So what you're seeing in the column on the left is the advertising to sales ratio, or in the nonprofit sphere, donation ratio. So email is the cheapest channel to activate, but it also makes up over 35 or 40% of the total volume of dollars. And then just kind of blowing down here, look at social media. It costs you 20% in comparison to 5%, and it only generates about 2.5%. So we're really big on using the right channel for the right purpose. And at Care2, we help thousands of nonprofits and agencies to really activate large communities and networks of people through petitions and causes and healthy living. And our whole purpose is to leverage the collective good across the internet to make change happen in the world. And we're starting to see that happen at scale in a way that's never been done before. So why prioritize your email marketing? Well, in the nonprofit space, let's cut to the chase, it's still driving about 40% of online donations. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to think about your email strategy. And we use sort of an email funnel strategy, email first. And here's some quick back of the envelope math you can do. The value of an email over the lifetime is about $10. And we look at the lifetime value being about 4 years. In addition to that, you own your own data. You can build much deeper direct-to-consumer relationships. You're not beholden to Facebook and their algorithms changing and having to rent your audience perpetually. You can drive more direct revenue more predictably. You can kind of control your fate across the board, including doing more powerful partnerships when you have that asset on your side, kind of like we did with Annie's. Here's a really key formula to understand that I use with my clients. And this is a great way to analyze the value of your overall email list. So it's total email sent times the conversion rate per email times the average cart value. So what you're aiming for is basically a 0.1% response rate, and that ranges depending on your cause and issue and how good you are, by about 0.05% to about 0.5%. So if you hit that and you send about 24 to 48 email appeals per year, you should see about 2.5 to 5% of your list converting. So that's a really key fundamental metric to understand the economics of email marketing. And then I'll show you how that compares to social in a second. This is just kind of a rule of thumb for mentality here. So if you send an email to about 1,000 people, and this is probably for the smaller organizations to think about, you might expect to see about 1 donation, or about 0.1%. Also, it costs you about the same to send an email to 100,000 people as it does to 1,000. So email is a total numbers game. It's about scale, and it's about quality as well as scale. And then the lifetime value, using my former formula there, is 100,000 emails should be worth about $500,000 to $2 million to your organization over its lifetime, if you're following best practices and sending enough good email. So in comparison with social media, if you're sending a message to 1,000 people with email, you're going to see much higher reach, much higher engagement, and you'll actually see the opportunity to do direct response. So this doesn't include Facebook advertising, which is starting to see some good traction for donations. But it's pretty advanced, and you have to have really good content. And that's something that George is probably going to cover in his session a little bit later. And we're seeing that social media can be an awesome tool to use in concert with email to drive more sharing, as well as cultivate relationships with the people already on your list. When we're talking about email, my bias is to ditch the newsletter and really focus on interesting stories. And this is something I'm really passionate about. This is Homer Simpson. The lizard brain is really key to understand when you're an email marketer. It's the key to grabbing attention. You excite the lizard brain and you get people paying attention, and then you can ask them to do stuff. This is a great example of the kind of rapid response campaigns we're doing at Care2 now. We have a team that scans the news and looks for citizen petitions that we can amplify into the mainstream. This is obviously a really egregious photo. It's really shocking with this horse running through a hoop of fire. Another great example of a blogger, environmental blogger, who was jailed just for speaking the truth. And look at the share rates on this. It's phenomenal. About 18,000 people shared this on Facebook, in addition to the signatures we got and the media hits that we got from our PR team. So again, it's about how do you tie this all together? And at the core of it is really this human storytelling. And I've got a friend named George Bryant, who is an advisor to Adidas and a number of other big brands. And he teaches brands how to speak human, basically. So great example here is my buddy Raj. Raj gave this incredible talk at Web of Change about 2 years ago, Not a Dry Eye in the House. And he shared his story about how he kicked heroin cold turkey about 12 years ago. Raj now helps people and businesses transform based on what he's learned from his own personal transformation. And this is a great example of, really leveraging the power of story, which is, basically hardwired and goes back to Maslow stuff around how we communicate and realize self-actualization, self-esteem, and meet our social needs and share the currency of being a human, which is through story. So all of that has to translate into your marketing to be powerful and effective. Here's a quick challenge for you, and I'll ask you to send an email to Emma, who is listening in here and is on our team, Emma at care2team.com. So the challenge is to take this image and write a caption and email it to us. We'd like to hear what you say. So a lot of this is up to your creativity, and we're going to spark that. And if you send this email, we'll send you a guide of our best practices to creating good images, and Emma will email that back to you. The second piece is having the right technology. So I'm getting more outspoken about just saying no to the low-level, entry-level programs like MailChimp and Constant Contact and Emma. We've tried to work with all of these companies, and they've been very hard to work with, and they are very trigger happy to shut down your email list if you start to get into the place where you want to grow faster than 3 people signing up for your email at a time. And just to save you a bunch of time, we work with all of the major CRMs, and we're pretty agnostic, but these 3 that I've listed here tend to be the most approachable for small to mid-sized organizations that want to graduate to a more integrated CRM. So it's really important. George, did you sneak that in my slide deck? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So also want to share with you on the technology side, the new rules for email deliverability. This is an awesome white paper our CTO and CEO put together about how to win the deliverability game. Care2 delivers millions of emails a year and actually a day. And so we have to be really on top of our deliverability, and also so that the clients we work with are getting, there are probably 100 clients right now acquiring probably 10,000 emails a second. And we need to make sure that those emails are all quality. So this white paper will be really helpful as you think about scale. And we focus a lot on best practices for growth. It's really tough to grow organically these days, but I'll share a couple of tricks that we like. And if you're looking into paid acquisition, you just be careful about doing the math. Look at the net cost per acquisition and pay attention to the all-in costs of your cost per click if you're doing Facebook or other channels, as well as any agency fees. So you can really do a head-to-head analysis on what that looks like. And then the key thing is to make sure you're asking for permission. I like to borrow stories from other sectors. This is from the natural products industry. My company there is Olamomo. We did a swap where we created a sweepstakes to do a giveaway of a bunch of Colorado-based products. And this was really popular and led to some really awesome email engagement of the people who signed up for this giveaway. And then we all got permission to email the people that signed up for the sweepstakes, and somebody won a cool backpack. There's another cool brand called Pact that does fair trade organic apparel and underwear and socks and things. They ask people to sign up for their email list through giving away free socks if you buy their underwear or t-shirts. They sell these at Whole Foods, for example. So it's a creative way to leverage your assets, and this is free. It doesn't really cost them anything other than the cost of a sock, to get people to engage on their email list. And then they have great follow-up and email series. This is a local nonprofit in Colorado, Colorado Public Radio. Right now during their fund drive, they're doing kind of an integrated online and offline call to action to win a trip to Costa Rica. So these are some alternative ways that you can leverage. Maybe you'll have a donor that would donate a trip for a couple $1,000s like this, but get creative around how you build your email list and craft partnerships. And then really make sure you're using the right tool for the right purpose. Again, harkening back to my slide earlier about some of the metrics around these channels. If you're an organization that has not maxed out your email channel and you're trying to raise money online, we really recommend the email first strategy. And then once you've gotten to kind of a critical mass in the hundreds of thousands of email subscribers, that's where it starts to make sense to leverage these other channels in coordination. But actually a lot of organizations flip that strategy and start with Facebook, but it's actually quite a bit less scalable and less efficient when you add it all up. Here's a great example of that. With my company, Olamomo, we paid for a very well-intentioned consultant to do content marketing. Over a period of about 18 months, we invested $35,000 in the retainers of these consultants. And we got a net result of $70 per fan and 0 sales. Contrasted with the partnership we did, we got about 850 emails in a day, and we got over $1,000 in sales from those email subscribers. And then with Care2, we're doing some innovative stuff with mission-based brands like a company called Fish People and also So Delicious. Fish People did a pledge to eat sustainable seafood in combination with Seafood Watch, the marine, which is the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And that had some incredible share rates. You'll see about 4,000 people shared that on social as well. And then we did a pledge to take a dairy-free, 21-day dairy-free challenge with So Delicious that did really well. Got over 70,000 people signed up for their email list between that and this campaign around eating well and doing good. So again, just some examples to spark your creativity from outside of the nonprofit sector. There's some pledges are a really innovative way to engage people and cultivate people. And then in terms of cultivation, we recommend a solid onboarding strategy. Again, story first. Think about your messaging arc for the year and think about the user journey and how you want to take people deeper down the funnel of your organization, using tactics like petitions, pledges, quizzes, partnerships, stunts, online, offline interactions, direct asks, stories, integration, et cetera. So our challenge to you, and this is the nonprofit average, what would it take for you to send 67 emails this year, and with at least 24 of them being direct donate oriented? Again, we're doing some innovative stuff with mission-based brands and integrating those brands with nonprofits. So I'd encourage you to think creatively about how you might partner with some of the brands. There are a ton of them in the natural products industry that are looking for partners right now to do authentic campaigns like this. So we did a campaign to support humane farming. And then we had an offline activation in coordination with Happy Egg Company at Expo West, which is a massive natural products trade show. So they built a kiosk and they got people to sign up there. And we got them to 25,000 signatures. 8,000 of those came in the last hour. And that unlocked a $25,000 donation for Compassion in Rural Farming. Happy Egg then followed up with an email series, and they got really strong open rates from the people that signed up from the pledge. 40% open rate on this one and 8% click-through rate. They had about a 30% or 26% on the next two emails with high click-through rates as well. So that onboarding and cultivation that you send out immediately is really important. And then you can start to do some advanced tactics like saying, hey, thanks for joining, sign up for social media. This is just to kind of lock it in that a social followed by email strategy is more effective than a social leading to email strategy. This is a case study from a couple years ago that proves the point quite well. With One Sky, which was a climate change movement, we acquired about 10,000 people online. We appended social media data, and their goal was to create offline precinct captains, which is about the highest ask you can do. And what we found was the people who were well networked on social media and had signed a petition converted at the highest rate by a long shot to high value ask offline volunteers, basically, that were precinct captains. That really sparked my curiosity, and then I've challenged a lot of organizations, the challenge is to you as well, to figure out how to do this integration better. And nowadays we have tools like Attentively, as well as using Facebook Insights, where if you have about 5,000 people on your email list, George's going to talk more about how to do advertising for lookalike targeting. But if you have 5,000 people on your list, you can upload and get a really detailed insight about what your audience looks like, and that doesn't cost anything. And then that's going to inform A, your email marketing better, but B, it'll also help inform how you find people that are really passionate through other channels. So with Care2, our methodology is to lead with an action like a petition or a pledge. We find that somebody who signed a petition is about 7 times more likely to donate downstream. And then we do some advanced things that'll show you around integrating that with direct response. But ultimately, we're capturing full contact information and promoting that through multiple channels on Care2 with an audience that's already activated through our network. So what's different from Facebook and Care2 is we've already found everybody that might be on Facebook that's going to be interested in causes, and we've already activated them and taken them further down the funnel. And then we're doing some advanced things like gathering phone numbers through in exchange for premiums, and integrating with offline methods as well. So some of these advanced techniques, and I'll blow through a couple case studies here, involve, this is advanced freestyle, by the way. I want to live in a world like this. This is amazing. Okay, so one of the holy grails is to get to offline givers, but also sustainers. So we have some nonprofits that are doing that, like the ASPCA, where they got about a 0.75% click-through rate and a 15% conversion on this form, which we tied to the end of the petition and drove direct traffic. And then 18% of the people clicking through from this made a regular gift. And then those people can be flagged as really high value leads that you can work on the phone and follow up in various channels to try to convert to sustainers. This is a great case study with the African Wildlife Foundation, where in about 5 months, they saw about 110% return on investment and about a 2.5% donor conversion, which gained them about 700 new donors. The average gift was about $36, and nearly a third of the donors gave at least a second gift or became regular givers. So that's the power of having a really well designed funnel and then a methodology for immediately following up and testing multiple channels. A couple more case studies that I'll kind of hurry through because my time is about up. In this case, this is a really sophisticated approach. They got about $20,000 for Freedom for Torture, and they wanted to test a new digital strategy to try to generate 200 regular givers in 4 months. So there was a 4-part series, and they got really sophisticated. This was actually their customized supporter journey that they developed. Kudos if you can do this. This is amazing. But it works. And they had people that were reinforced. They took, subsequent actions on their site. They did some low bar social asks to integrate. They tested out different tactics for donations. And then they worked the phones. This guy actually, the reason I throw this up, he's a genius on the phone. He convinced Michael Jackson to speak with Jane Goodall back in the day. And he likes spiders. Okay. So last case study here. And this is a user journey that took Compassion World Farming again. And they were able to connect people with a much more meaningful funnel and develop this community that led to serious results, from the petition all the way through to the next action page donation, to then a welcome series, multiple welcome series with appeals involved. And then they followed up also through telemarketing. And we have some things we can do to append telephones. Other charities are getting phones through premiums, et cetera. But we're seeing really high conversion rates, and then following up in the mail is also still really powerful best practice. So it's really important to tie all of these things together when you're running an advanced program like this, and you can see that pan out into really high ROI. If you look at the blue line there on the bottom, we're seeing in some cases over a period of about 4 years to 5 years, 600% ROI. And again, multi-channel email is driving the main thrust of this, but if you have the resources to integrate this with these other channels, there's incremental value to be had. This is a really complicated slide, but it doesn't have to be complicated. So there are a lot of new tools. George is going to talk about some of their tactics for how this can all come together in a really efficient way. And the technology has advanced so much from when all we had was Get Active back in the day. So again, just want to reiterate that, this is not just about single channel, but email has to really come first in order to maximize all of these other channels. And that's where the ROI is. So if you aren't focusing your resources on this as a main priority, I'd really encourage you to focus on that and learn what you're missing. And then you can do things like Patagonia did. Again, they reached out to us to really activate a campaign at scale. And because we had the list already built and we had the people already activated and passionate and tagged and segmented, we were able to drive about 100,000 signatures in a week that garnered over 6.4 million social media shares, earned about 30.6 million earned media impressions, and helped Patagonia push their campaign over the edge to help secure the Arctic legislation before Obama left office. So, by the way, I just want to say no whales were harmed in the making of this webinar. And I'm really grateful for the work that Whole Whale is doing, and thanks for having me. If you'd like to find some more case studies, reach out, or we've got a great set of case studies on care2services.com/case studies. And thank you. Over to you, George.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Justin. That was incredibly informative. I love the use of real data. Something sometimes we miss out there. You shared, so I have to share my brand new daughter here as well. She's probably responding to one of my jokes in this picture. But as we move into it, we're going to be focused on some very specific strategies around using the acquisition targets here and the funnel of engagement, and I want to focus on those pieces. As we move into this, we covered some of the initial steps and the importance of email, and inside of that, we're going to cover the funnel of engagement, the role of Google Analytics, of understanding that ecosystem, some of our tactics around advertising and remarketing, which we colorfully call echo chambering, donor analytics questions, and then some analysis. Obviously, please post your questions. We're looking, and we will be covering those as we move into the end of that. As you look at the landscape for donor retention, these numbers sort of drive me nuts coming from the AFP and reports. Donor retention rates of an average of 43%. And only keeping, 1 out of 5, 20% of first-time donors, you're only keeping them, you're losing everybody else. So all of that work that you're potentially doing with your petitions and your activities you're losing a disturbing percentage of that. And, in 2016, there's an updated bit of data, your overall blended retention rate of about 45%. So you're losing, half of your customers. If that were Facebook, it would be like, you got to be kidding me. That is an unacceptable retention rate. So paying attention to the right things in the messaging is incredibly important. It begins though with a conceptual conversation around how we look at the impact chasm. And that is the fundamental answer to why do you have a website? And why do you have a website boils down to what you're putting into it versus the outcomes you expect to have and dealing with the impact chasm. I'm creating new pages on the site. I'm doing this work online, but why does that relate to my outcomes? And this one, we're very focused, okay, donations, but by the way, you could swap in donations for volunteers online, people registering for patient databases, people potentially signing up to become organ donors, as one of our clients does. So you need to define your chasm and the purpose of your website, and in doing so, you're building your funnel strategy, your digital funnel strategy, where you're moving through some variation of this type of pyramid. Aware, people know about you, they've come to the site potentially, they're interested. Then they give you some indication that they care about you. Specifically, though, in that interested, making the switch over to giving you their email. So giving the email over to your organization, then engaged. Are they clicking through? Are they opening? And then finally committed. Are they making that donation? There are a lot of steps in here. And this is exactly what Justin was talking about. And to reinforce this, if people are just coming to your site, passing through, it is water through a sieve. Petitions and other tactics here and telling great stories, it is only going to work if you're capturing emails through an intelligent strategy and then nurturing them, developing these giving moments. As you define these pieces and look at all of the areas for information and data, you just looked at tons of slides with tons of numbers on them, and it's a perfect place to keep this in mind, that information consumes the attention of its recipients. Therefore, the wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. All of this noise going on, all of these balls bouncing around, how do we know what to pay attention to? Which is why it's important to really think about the KPIs, the indicators in our funnel that mean we are doing well, that we're not just chasing potentially just social media followers or reach. I want you to think about the 80-20 rule, right? For many events, the Pareto principle, 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. And this is documented time and again, from everything from soybeans to shoe buying techniques to consumers and to donors as well, and online activities. And I'm going to apply this into the funnel I just showed you. When it comes to the work, what I generally see is all of this work, 80% of our work spent on generating the awareness. What was our reach? How many posts do we have on social? And then only 20% of dealing with, once people are committed, by the way, this funnel goes lower, right? There's one-time donors, recurring donors, large donors. You have a whole fundraising department, but sometimes that's divorced from the rest of the team. It's siloed and you're not thinking of it with regard to results. And frankly, somebody who's just visited your site day one should be treated differently and different types of attention paid than somebody who's already maybe written a check to you for the first time. So the results are coming from 20% of our work that happens in this committed area once people are on our lists, which is why stories matter, which is why you may want to play with some of the things that Justin pushed us on, which is increasing frequency. Maybe your eyes bulge when you're like, you wanted me to send over 60, how many emails? Play with this and think about where those results are coming from. The next piece we need to cover here is understanding in the digital landscape, if you were playing with funnels, you have to play with Google Analytics. Without Google Analytics, you have got the Bravo supermarkets over in Brooklyn from a bird's eye view. You're just staring down being like, I think somebody went in there and came out. Once you install Google Analytics, a free web tracking software from Google, you can see which aisles people are going down. You can see what sales they're hitting up and the content and the location they came from. And once you set up goals and properly configure Google Analytics, what you're getting is, down to the point of sale where this happy family picks out what I think is some sort of pumpkin squash. Goals, setting up goals in Google Analytics. For the purposes of donors, gosh, you have to set up the donation tracking for your site. You have to set up email acquisition. You know how important it is now. You have to tell Google and configure that literally in the back end of Google in the admin section under goals, click new goal, and you can create Anytime somebody clicks a donate now button or a login or a sign up or a submit, you're tracking those with different goals so that you can see the types of channels that are working to increase the acquisition rate of your emails, of your donors. So again, no goals, there's no point to the game. You just have a bunch of people kicking a ball around a soccer field for no particular point. Inside of Google Analytics, we can then create segments. In particular for this webinar, I'll make the point that you can actually create one for rich users. You can create a segment based on a geographical distribution of people that live in the top 10 cities, for instance, and see what those folks are doing, and then target them in different ways, which is a perfect segue into our tactic around ad marketing. Echo chambering is this idea of surrounding our donors with positive impressions of our brand, multi-channel overlapping communications. Just because you hear it on one channel doesn't mean you're going to necessarily convert. As you begin to see, hey, isn't that interesting? This net company keeps following me around. Now I go on to, the next site I go to and the ads are chasing me around. People do it because it works. As we get more familiar with a brand, our sort of lizard and mammalian brains accidentally replace familiarity with trustworthiness. Oh, I see that everywhere. That must be reliable. I'm more likely to purchase it. We're taking advantage of this for good. So with echo chambering ads, we can hyper-target high net worth individuals or even just general donors on our list. Why echo chambering ads? As I said, look, you can't just stick with one channel. We trust and choose what's familiar. We have to remind our audience that we are awesome. We have to be sending ARC, mail, anything we possibly can to, in a moment, surround them with the idea that our organization is worthy, and here is your giving moment. I promised you the rich district segments, so we actually created this. Here's the link, bit.ly/richga will actually give you the 20 richest cities segmented for your Google Analytics. With this segment, you can then create even further in, look at anybody who went to your donate page, and then you can retarget, remarket people that went to your website. And we did this for example, with the National Aphasia Association. You can retarget those people on Google Analytics using the cookies in the background that are automatically running when you define that audience and send it into Google AdWords. Now, you can't do that with the Google AdWords grant. There's a different tactic for that. But if you're in a pay-to-play world, this may make sense, especially during giving seasons or giving moments where you're reinforcing your organization's message and creating that availability in people's minds and mental memory. So with the AdWords grant, there's some exciting new tactics that you can literally take a note. If nothing else, you can use this right now. If you have the Google AdWords grant, that's the free $10,000 a month, you can create a maximize conversions ad group connected to the donate goal that I already talked about setting up on Google Analytics on your site, and take advantage of the fact that there is now an unlimited cap on bids. Formerly it was $2, now it's unlimited, to optimize for those donations. Now monitor it. We have seen it work, we have seen it fail. Check your doctor, results may vary, but this is certainly a tactic worth exploring with the new changes in Google AdWords grants. In fact, it is so freaking awesome. It is what our next webinar is about. So, stay tuned. wholewhale.com/events is where you'll find that. And if you're interested in AdWords and learning more, we have the only online course that teaches Google AdWords grants to nonprofits at wholewhale.com/AdWords. Next up, email and donor data in Facebook ads. You just heard Justin talk about it. If you have over about 5,000 emails on your list, you can go into Facebook ads and create this segment that will give you data. It'll actually give you the sort of total even estimated worth income levels of that list. What's even creepier is that it will then let you create not only lookalike audiences, but also segments of that to advertise to your audience or lookalike audience members of your own list that are rich. So the rich friends of the people on your list potentially, or people that have similar attributes. Look, you may be thinking, oh my God, that is so creepy. I will never do that. Fair, but guess what? The organizations that are potentially working against your cause are using these tactics. And so I want you to be aware of what's possible and to let you know that there is at least worth a test in here for doing this, especially during giving periods and peak ask moments. Donor targeting on Facebook ads, it's possible. You can also include the Facebook page if you want to build out the audience definition, because if it's too specific, if it's too narrow, the ROI on that price is not really going to be as optimized as possible. You can also include the Facebook tracking pixel on your website to give you added remarketing value and optimization ability within Facebook. All right, a lot that can be done there, and Facebook is actively working on competing with the web analytics market and giving more data actually on the demographics on the back end that will also be creating more content and information around. The questions are key in the process of analysis for any of the topics that we've covered here when you're jumping into Google Analytics, when you're jumping into donor analytics. After the data are gathered, frankly, it's about asking your team, what questions do you need the answer to? Do you need to know our retention rate? Do you need to know what is engaging people the most? Do you need to know where the most email registrations are coming from, or day of the week, or source? And you analyze, find the insights, and you learn and act. So potentially you look and you find that, hey, what is our current email acquisition rate per month? And you find that it's actually low. What was it versus last year? It's even lower. Well, why is that? Well, last year we ran our annual petition, or we did this type of activity and we didn't do it this year. We're going through this process again and again, making sure we ask questions. So here's some other examples. What about donors by location? So perhaps you have a distribution of donors across, but then you can look by city and understand the goal conversion rate by city. Maybe your message actually is more coastal elite versus appealing to people in places like, I guess we have Chicago in the middle here at 7%. We can see 9% in Los Angeles, but maybe we're losing people here in Boston because we're not writing with a Boston accent. Another question here is, what if people don't convert on first visit? And this is where assisted conversions come in. Effectively, assisted conversions are kind of like this idea of passing, getting an assist, and then the bucket. Michael Jordan, famous stat for him is that he increased the average score and conversions of everyone else on the court. Defenses would swarm around, he'd be able to pass the ball, and he increases their rate in the same way that potentially somebody who finds your site and then comes back 30 days later and then signs up for an email and then 30 days later donates. Well, there's a lot of touches that happen there. People don't marry you on the first date. There's a couple dates that happen. And so if you've set up goals, you now have assisted conversions inside of conversions. Play with this. Look at the overlap. Maybe social networks aren't helping you with that last click conversion, but maybe they assist along the way, depending on how things are working. What path did they actually take? We can actually see the paths when I'm talking about assisted conversions. So in this case, just to narrate this, organic search, somebody types in the case of aphasia, what are aphasia symptoms? And then they come back later for a second visit saying, hey, what was that? I know that exact site. I'm going to type it into the browser, go right to it, and then convert. We can also assign conversion value for the different pieces in our system to get an estimation on value for these types of actions and tighten those up. It's important to also, if you have a multi-step donation page, to see where people are dropping off, to understand that just because people went to the main donation page doesn't mean they got all the way there. Even if you have that 5% click-through on your email, doesn't mean they donated, by the way. Because if you have a terrible donation page online, you could literally be throwing away, in this case, 90% of the people that came there just off the bat because you put too many steps in the way. Things to analyze and look at. You can do deeper donor analysis of your existing list. Here are just some ideas to get you started. Looking at retention, I've thrown out those stats from the AFP. You can look up your average gift. You heard the person talking about cart and the cart size. What is your average gift? And then you can use that to calculate your own exact email list value, lifetime donor value, the frequency of gift, donor distribution, the cost per dollar raised, their capacity to give, and this is with your pending data and looking at donor scraping. You can use a tool. We love fundraising report cards, pretty darn simple. make pretty charts, how have donations changed over time, see which levels they're at, and looking at, year over year. We love the context, always looking for context. 1 year is not really necessarily enough to look at the whole landscape and understanding how you're acquiring them. You can see lapsed donor reports, understanding the distribution here. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I don't have the time to do it, I don't think you have the time not to do it. The fact that, you're potentially losing a potential donor that you haven't re-engaged that, dropped 10K or more, should mean that there's opportunity sometimes in looking backward, understand who's in your existing list and at least build it into a process, or who's downgrading because they're not getting enough messages or haven't heard from somebody on your team. So Olivia, I'll talk about Lighthouse in the end, but maybe you can throw in some questions for us, please.
Yeah, we have a couple that came in for Justin during his part of the deck. Justin, your key formula, Ann Wicks would like to know, is that for organizations of all sizes and budgets?
Yeah, so that is just basic, the basic formula for email marketing and what you could expect off of, common email metrics. So again, it's basically the number of emails you send in a particular time period times the average response rate per email times the average gift, and that will give you a projectable value of what your email program might look like over a year. So for example, if you have 1,000 emails on your list and you send one email, you're going to get probably a 0.1% conversion or less, which would be about one donor. So to get 24 donors, you'd need to send 24 emails in a year. If you want 48 donors, you'd need to send about 48. And that's just, very back of the envelope math, but that's the gist. That's how you use that formula.
Awesome. We have another question from Carolyn Silvera. I'm in a fairly niche nonprofit with a list of under 4,000 right now. I've tried Care2 petitions to acquire and grow, but I can't get much growth going. I topped out at around 40 signatures, I think. And our audience isn't really big enough to help us grow the petition, which seems to be necessary. Ditto when I've used MoveOn's petitions. It seems like a catch-22 where the onus is on the nonprofit to use their existing audience to make the petition succeed. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so I'm making the assumption here that this nonprofit was creating a user-generated petition on Care2 and MoveOn, which both systems allow. But in that scenario, then it's more or less like driving traffic to your own website. So the onus is on you in that scenario to actually drive traffic. Care2 Services offers a paid option where we are driving traffic to these petitions for you. And in that scenario, it's more, we're doing on the order of 200,000 signatures a month for some organizations, which yields about 100,000 email subscribers. So that's kind of the pay to play model. So the short answer is yes, if you're going to use these tools as a kind of a citizen activist would, totally fair game, but you have to figure out ways to drive traffic. And so that's either partnerships or some of the other options that we talked about earlier.
So as Olivia's gathering some other questions, just really quickly, Lighthouse is actually an add-on to Google Analytics that we're developing that will help you if any emails are registered through your site to connect that to their web browsing behavior, creating a handshake between that and CRMs you may be using, so that you can actually go down and drill into the individual. All right, this is a high-value email. How have they interacted with our site for the past 2 years based on cookie data? So super creepy, but for good.
Creepy for good. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing with all of that integration, George. It's awesome. And it's just the access we have now to all this data and tech is amazing. It's, evolved so much in the last decade, where it used to just be, you kind of spray and pray with more of like a broadcast approach. And now you can really have multiple touch points with people through all these channels, beyond just the email list. But then that has a ripple effect in terms of the ROI too from investment in an email program. So super cool what you guys are. I'm really curious to learn more about what you guys are doing there at WWULive.
Yeah. So I want to push actually on a point that you seem to speak on both sides of. In one, a few slides, you're like, look, energy into social media is not producing the ROI, right? If I spend an hour on email versus an hour on social, no question, I'm getting 3-4x return on my email efforts. That said, it seemed like one of the success metrics that you were genuinely showing in your case studies, and that seemed to also drive signups, is the social shares. So can you talk about the difference in your mind of saying like my energy of like working and posting on social media versus my audience doing the work for me?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that it's sort of order of priority. And also it has to do with the size and the resources that your organization has. So here's sort of the where all of the inertia has gone in the last decade. And again, I go back to MySpace. So I've kind of seen all of this evolve. And what happened was that social media got all of the attention, and it's obviously really important as a particular tactic. But the question is for what and at what point and how much resources does it cost? So what I would argue is that as you're growing as an organization, you really need to focus on mastering probably one channel. And because so much of your power in digital fundraising actually comes from email, it's not rational to go spread your budget across other channels if you haven't maximized the cheapest and highest ROI channel to acquire from. It's just not rational. However, at a certain point, when we're starting to work with really sophisticated large organizations that are at a scale where the impact of sharing, where you have 25% of people sharing and your list is 1 million people, that's a lot more people involved. So there's a ripple effect that can happen. And I think that what social has really lent itself towards is that megaphone effect, but it doesn't work unless you have the scale. So that's where getting started, you're going to be spreading your resources too thin, like the lesson I learned with my own company. Whereas if we had just taken that $35,000 and grown our email list, that would have been predictable revenue we could have generated. And then as we got into the hundreds of thousands of emails, we could then go back and use that 100,000 person email list to then go activate Facebook and do some targeted ad campaigns with you or things like that, to where we could then really leverage that initial investment much more effectively and efficiently. So when I show those share rates on the petitions, that's just what Care2's community is generating at scale. And just I'll just cut to the chase there. The subtle message is we're going to crush any social media campaign with a petition. So if you launch a petition on Care2, you're also getting the value of sharing across Facebook that's integrated into the services that we already have. So that's part of why I share that.
Sure. And we have a question here. What is the Care2 pay-to-play service cost? Because obviously every petition on your site doesn't do that. Knowing what I know of Pareto and power laws, but what is the Care2 pay-to-play?
Yeah, so we innovated in this, and we're really a disruptor in the direct mail acquisition game for the last 15 years, and have really powered a lot of the growth behind a number of larger nonprofits in particular. And so we were the first ones to say, okay, let's help nonprofits reduce risk in the internet marketing game and focus on the highest value metric, which is the email list, and then figure out a way to charge only for the actual emails of people who've been well vetted and targeted. And we use algorithms and behavioral targeting to look at only people who are really interested in a particular cause. And then ultimately they're screened by their permission. And so they have to sign up for your list. And then we also do some things to screen out even after that, to almost do like a double opt-in and say, you sure you want to be on this list? And we send a welcome message and clean up anybody who wants to opt out. So all of that we charge for national campaigns. It's on the order of about $1.75. And we do some geo-targeted campaigns. Sometimes that's north of $2. But basically the ROI calculation you want to do is to say, okay, if you're doing that acquisition from Facebook, if you don't have a lot of expertise in content, it's more often likely that you're probably paying more like, $5 per email. And you're not getting, 100% suppression lists like we do. You're not getting all of that cultivation we've done upstream of that as well. And you're not necessarily seeing the retention rates that we do. So $1.75 for an email that's worth lifetime value of $10 is kind of how the math works out. So we've really tried to put our thumb in the scale on behalf of the nonprofits so they have a fighting chance to develop highly scalable programs. And we're starting to see, groups that recoup that within 6 months and others that take 2 years, depending on their sophistication and whether they follow these strategies or not.
I'll also say one of the other points that I think is not to go unnoticed here is that getting an email is not the same. It's not just, hey, what is it? They're all worth the same thing in the bucket. I think there's a huge difference between the method in which you acquire that email. And if you've acquired an email because someone was like really pissed that a horse is being turned into flames, is very different than they clicked on some clickbait and were like, all right, I want the free thing that you're kind of giving away over here, and here's my email, but frankly, I don't want to hear from you.
Yeah, that's right. We've tested, you can imagine all the testing we've done in 20 years of this, and nothing beats an urgent action like a petition like that for teeing up that passion of a consumer or an activist. And as I mentioned earlier, there have been studies done. There was a guy that was actually at the CBO who did an analysis of some pretty major email lists, and they found there was about a 7x likelihood to donate if somebody had come in from an action like you described. So it's pretty hard to beat that math from any other channel, unless you're getting like super micro targeted on content. And we see some groups that don't do advocacy have some success with content downloads for like toolkits. We've done that with the ASPCA, where they might do a download for a free pet safety kit. And that can be, tactics like that are interesting if you don't do advocacy. But if you have advocacy or can even do close to advocacy, that's the most powerful way to really build a funnel like that.
Awesome. Look, we are at our time. So thanks so much. There were some questions about Lighthouse. Really quickly, it's in beta and it'll work regardless of what CRM you're using. For deep integration, it's based on beta pieces. We have recorded this. It's saved. It's going to be pushed back out. You have given us your email, which you now realize maybe means a bit more than it used to, but we're going to message back out when this is posted live. Thank you so much, Justin, and to our team who put this together, and for all the time you just shared with us. Hopefully it's helpful to help you do the work that needs to be done.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the love, Kelsey.
Hey, Kelsey.
George, if you have time, one last question did come in for you.
Go. Yeah, what do we got?
Yeah. Why did the whale cross the road?
Because he saw some krill?
To get to the other tide.
Cross the chasm. All right.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Care2 is at care2.com. And you can see more Whole Whale events coming up at wholewhale.com/events. And thanks so much again, Justin and George.
Pleasure. Thank you.